right. Hello, everybody. We're Shift SC, and we're USC's first student-led tech ethics club. And we're super excited to be here in Professor Choi's class. You know, we've been developing these modules as part of the AI ethics curriculum initiative that we have. And the goal of our team is to really educate and spread awareness of the powerful AI tech and how this will really affect the society at large and individuals like us as well. So, and yeah, we've been working on this module for around over a year, and it's really grateful for us to be here, and thank you, Professor Choi, for allowing us this opportunity. And yeah, we can take it away with Dung. You can introduce yourself for a second. I'm John, and I started Shift SC and also started this initiative, AI Ethics. And yeah, I think AI is really important in today's society, and yeah, it's good to know for everyone.
I'm Zoom, I'm a sophomore, and I'm one of the team's co-leads now with Winston. Doing this work is really awesome, so that's why I've been doing it since freshman.
Yeah, and my name is Winston, also co-lead with Dung, and we're all super passionate about AI and very excited for the presentation today.
All right. Good luck.
Hi guys, yeah. I will start by saying that I'm also learning about things like the things that you're seeing today. So I think that our approach for this session is that we're trying to learn together about some of the issues that are raised by the technologies that I will introduce today, and specifically about natural language processing in dealing with fake news. And hopefully along the way we'll have a good discussion. I think there will be some components where you can use like the AI text classifiers and everything. So if you have a computer and an OpenAI account, then you can join in with me on some of these activities as well. So yes, Shift SC and our AI ethics curriculum team just wanted to thank Professor Choi and everyone again for having us in your class. But I'll kind of move into it because I think this is we will have a lot to do today. So first, when we talk about fake news, right? It's a topic that I think around like 5 years ago we didn't talk about fake news as sort of like this buzzword, right? Now you see around the corner, everyone often you hear fake news just popping up here and there. But what exactly do we understand it to be, and do we have any sort of consensus on it that we can base our technologies and that we can base our technologies on, right? And second, we will talk about like some of the engineering and some of the social solutions that are being proposed to address the problem with fake news, and we'll sort of see how effective or even not effective they are. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about how do we go from here, right? What can we do, and what can you do as you kind of go along, and when you graduate, maybe this will be something that you're interested in working with. All right, so let's start with a fun exercise. This is one of my favorite parts to talk about. So when we talk about fake news, right, there are some kind of properties about it that I think is powerful about it, but that's also very dangerous, right? It's common, you see it everywhere, everything. Let's try to make some fake news out of it. It's very captivating. This is one of the studies that is posted in the journal Science, and basically they talk about how like lies spread faster than the truth. People tend to distribute it more, right? And even sometimes when you see some of those like fake news captions, they're very captivating as well. And that is part of the reason why people are sucked into it over some sort of like boring news. If you see like some of the fake news articles, you might be very surprised about how they can capture an audience in, because it's so kind of it talks about things that like you wouldn't expect, right? And that element of surprise is often something that sucks people in. And one study suggested that there was like 150 million views for fake news articles in 2019, just a lot, right? The reach is kind of amazing if you think about it. So a question might be, well, can we use technology in any capacity or form, right, to address this problem of fake news? Because I think that sometimes people have fallen prey to it and have done very bad things. So this is something we as a society might want to talk about, like how to avoid, right? But so I guess that we all have this common goal of wanting to create something to address that problem. And let's say that you are all kind of in this place where you are all developers for this new tool that would help people identify fake news and do something about fake news, right? But now, let's say, what do you understand fake news to be? Can anyone kind of give me your definition maybe, or just like, what are sort of like the markers that you would use to tell us something is like fake news or not? Yes.
Misleading information.
Yeah, misleading information. That's a good kind of marker, right? Any others that you can think of? Yes.
Like the author is credible.
Yeah, the credibility of something like the author or the publishing platform, right? Anything else you might look for? Okay, yeah. So we'll talk about it more, but right now it maybe in your kind of perception of what fake news is, there are many different things that can go on, right? And to kind of demonstrate that, let's take a look at let's do a little bit of a small game to start us off, right? So here are some of the news, or I guess some of the things that have been floating around on the internet. And what I'll ask you to do is I'll tell you a little bit about what all of these are, and then can you tell me if this is fake or not, right? And you can chime in with your opinions as well. So the first one, apparently ChatGPT, which has been talked about a lot, right? When you tell them to create a poem to admire Donald Trump, it says that, well, I cannot be political, right? But when it's asked to do a poem praising Joe Biden, it makes a very long poem that I can't paste here, right? But apparently that's happening. So what do we think? Just maybe by a show of hands, who thinks this is fake? All right, a sizable proportion. How about who thinks it's not? Who thinks this is real? Okay, actually, yeah, this is real, and it was posted on Snopes, and it was one of the things that blows your mind, right? Because if you would think that ChatGPT, if it has like enough checks, it must cover for all of the cases like that, but apparently it's maybe a little bit partial, I guess. Okay, what about this next one? Apparently, this company has been producing insulin and saying that insulin is now free. So instead of paying, let's say like $100 per month, no, don't pay anything. What do we think? Is this fake? Who thinks it's fake? Yeah, yeah. I think the consensus is clear. This is fake, and it is. This is a parody account actually. You may be kind of taken in by the check mark, but as we all know, right after Elon Musk bought Twitter, this became like something that you can buy for $8 a month, and this is one of those parody accounts. All right. What about this next one? Apparently, at MIT, they're having a class that teaches people how to appease whims of capricious tech CEOs. What do we think? Is it real? Who thinks it's real? Okay, who thinks it's fake?
It's fake, not real.
Yeah, I mean, factually, we would know it is. We would know it is fake, right? And if I show you the source, The Onion, maybe some of you are familiar with it. Yeah, this is an article from The Onion. It's one of the funnier ones I've read. So yeah. At this point, like you might ask yourself, is this even fake news, right? I was pretty surprised to see that some like websites out there also classify satirical news, which is what The Onion is, as also fake news, because their reasoning is that real, like if it's not real, then it's fake, and that includes satirical news, which are definitely not real, right? Okay, and what about the last one? So apparently, President Joe Biden said that our economy, and this is probably in 2022, had 0% inflation, 0%. What do we think? Is this real? thinks it's fake. Okay, I feel like this one is a little bit hard to tell, but I'll give you the context, right? So this statement, President Joe Biden actually said that, right? So it's a fact that he said it, but the kind of the truth of this statement is a little bit difficult to tell, because what happened was that compared to June, it was 0% inflation, right? So inflation stayed the same between those 2 months. But often when we talk about inflation, we often talk about it kind of year-on-year terms. And if we do that kind of analysis, then inflation comes out to, I think, somewhere around 6 or 8%, which is what the rate is kind of now, right? So his statement, while it is true, right, it gives you a sort of different perception of, say, how the US economy is doing, right? And so while you might argue that, yeah, it's real because, you know, he's not saying anything wrong, but at the end of the day, right, you might consider if this is true, because it might give people an understanding that is different from what the factual data tells you. Right? So I think that from this exercise, and hopefully it has kind of, and you started thinking about what are some difficulties in looking at something and saying, oh, it's fake, or oh, it's real, right? Some of the challenges that we have in thinking about fake news, and I'm just gonna summarize them here, right? The first one is what we have been talking about in the last few examples, right? There are many different degrees. Something might be absolutely true, something might be absolutely false, but most of the things are not kind of in those two extremes of the spectrum. Most of them are in kind of the middle a little bit. So kind of like President Biden's statement, it was not somewhere around these, right? It's not totally true, it's not totally false either. And sometimes it's hard for you to go and say, well, overall, like, right? Like, do you do a cutoff point? If something is like 75% or more, then it gets a pass, and if it's not, then it fails the test, right? It's very hard to tell, I feel like. And getting some AI or another technology tool to tell you that is even, to do that for you is even a little bit harder, I would presume. And then there's also the kinds of fake news that is rolling out there, right? So again, I included something from The Onion, right? Things like satirical news are sort of like difficult when we talk about the fake news that we want to combat, right? When we talk about fake news that we want to do something about, it's often of some kind like this one, right? This is saying the WHO is attempting to take over the world by by vaccine diplomacy during COVID, and this one right here is this organization is trying to make kind of a meme format about like how socialism or communism is bad by showing like these empty shelves, but they will actually it was actually taken after like a natural disaster in Japan. So that means like you can see that the range of intention right here is very wide ranging, right? You have some sort of like funny, satirical to kind of very serious, like loaded conspiracy. And along this dimension, it's very hard to tell as well, because some of them you just want to say that, oh, it's just satirical news. Like I don't even consider it to be fake, because it's not the kind of like bad fake news that I want to eliminate, right? And the last challenge is the origins of fake news, right? So you might have seen celebrities, public figures try to put out fake news out there, right? So a while ago, Elon Musk posted something about Paul Pelosi, right? Trying to insinuate that he was drunk and he did very bad things. But then after a while, he responded not very directly. This was in response to someone else, but he said, "Nonetheless, I apologize." Right. So you can see that the power of kind of like the famous people out there is that they can put out these fake news, and it's very hard to deal away with those news, right? Because once the news is out there, millions of people will have seen it. Even if 2 million people have seen his apology, it doesn't help for the rest of them who have already formed an opinion of Paul Pelosi based on what Elon Musk has been saying, right? And along people, now we have also AI trying to write fake news, right? So if you take a look at this article right here, it's saying that those who have been vaccinated against measles have a higher chance of developing autism, right? So it fits into that anti-vax narrative, right? If you read it, who thinks that, well, if I say this, then you will know who it's written by, right? But if you read it for the first time, chances are you're not gonna realize that it was written by an AI, right? It's very hard, I would say, in this kind of time where you have ChatGPT floating around everywhere. You can give me like an essay that you tell me that, oh, I wrote that essay, and I'll read through that essay and say, yeah, that sounds awesome. Then you tell me that was ChatGPT written, and I would be surprised, right? Very hard to tell. And it combines the malicious intention of those who want to put out there an agenda that is kind of contrary to the truth, and the stylistic flair of the AI. So the AI is really good at writing some sort of flowery, a little bit more flowery language, right? And an example of this is someone who is a CS student at Berkeley, who published this whole fake blog about things like productivity and self-help. So those kind of positive messages on the forum. And this was back when ChatGPT wasn't really like in the public. So what he did was that he asked like another PhD, as a PhD student at Berkeley who had access to the system to do research, like can I use this for my project? And he was like, yeah, okay. And then after that, I started to post blogs, right? It was positive content, but you can imagine what would happen if it starts to kind of post fake news that had some sort of like, it was well written, it was cited, it was this and that, right? And largely people didn't notice. And even the people who did notice, so this is someone who did notice and was a little bit kind of spicy about it, I feel. Down here, other people like downvoted their comment and says like, oh, like you should like hurl this accusation against someone. So dissenters would even like downvote it, which is kind of scary when you think about how like if someone was trying to do something bad, what could they do with this? What could they do with this tool in their hand, right? So hopefully I've been not going too fast. Everyone following okay? Okay, awesome. Yeah. So after all of this, what does it boil down to, right? I think one thing that we probably can agree on together is that the fake and the real, right? When you want to try to put it in terms of what is acceptable for my tool to recognize as fake and what's not, it's very difficult to agree on some sort of convention because there are many dimensions of fake news, right? The people, the degree, and all that stuff. And then how you kind of define fake news is also different from person to person, right? And so to kind of open the discussion and throw back to you guys a little bit, let's go back to that scenario where every one of us was like a developer in this for good tech company, right? You want to develop something that would help classify something as fake news or not, right? So my question to you is, what sort of fake news would you try to tackle? Do you try to tackle every type of fake news that we've talked about, or do you want to focus on a specific subset of it, right? And why do you think that distinction between what you consider as fake and what you consider as not is justified? Right? So, yes.
Personally, I don't know that I could make a distinction at all. I mean, like all right, supposing I draw the line at things that are just like completely false. How do I know that they're completely false? Because like I can like everybody's seen articles which they're like, this is completely false, that someone else is like, I don't know what you're talking about, this is completely true, and the fact that you don't agree with me is telling of blah 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 blah. So like, how is there it has to come back to reality. So can you answer the question still in like cyberspace without consulting something else? And in which case, how do you, I don't know, it's just weird. What do you refer to?
I think you're proposing a lot of interesting kind of distinctions there, right? So I think part of your response was that when you assume that something is, when you assume something is true, are you kind of basically taking a stance on the matter? Is that fair to say?
It's part of it, but
Mhm.
like
And
people
yeah.
just like live in different realities. They think certain people think that certain patterns of facts are true that other people just like completely disagree with. Like, I don't mean to get political, but like
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who believe that the 2020 election was fraudulent. There's a lot of people who believe otherwise, and you just like they each have things that they'd like refer to that they'd say, oh, this is my evidence, and then someone else would say your evidence is bad, but they'll say that someone else's evidence is bad, and so it's like in order to say that something's real or fake on that subject, you know.
Yeah, you inherently
It's a little awkward.
assume a world,
position.
right? And you're inherently kind of trying to polarize yourself. Yeah, that's a really interesting point too, because it gets to the idea of what is true. Like, is there like something that is objectively like true, right? Or when you accept one's world as true, then are you kind of basically biasing yourself? I think that's a fine kind of distinction, and also like a very interesting questions that a lot of these kind of a lot of these platforms have to deal with, because sometimes their version of the truth is very different from yours, right? Any other opinions on this? Okay, yeah, I mean, I think this is a very good question, because when you think about it, right, it ultimately boils down to some kind of nature of truth, which is a very difficult topic even when we're talking just pure philosophy. So let's maybe move on by talking about how how people right now are dealing with this problem, right? How they approach this topic from maybe a technology perspective or maybe from a social perspective, right? So what tools do we have? And here I'm going to start focusing on technology a little bit, but I think at the end of the day we'll circle back to the question of, do we need technology at all, right? But let's start by kind of indulging ourselves with the technology a little bit. So for the tools out there are many, and I was very surprised to find all of these. The names are here, maybe they look familiar to you or not. Have any of you tried any of these? Maybe that last one, if you are in that OpenAI ecosystem. Yeah, no, this one is very new. I think this one is just like a week old or two. So, and if you haven't, maybe today will be the time you first try it. So what do these do? Right? They will take in the words of an article and sometimes they will try to look at the metadata as well, so something like the author or the website or something like that, right? And what they do is they often have two main objectives, right? They can either directly say whether the news is truthful, which goes back to the problem that you just identified a little bit earlier, which is they are trying to tell you like what is right and what is wrong, right? But a lot of them, actually what they do is they help indirectly by their kind of line of argument goes that like often it's just people who have malicious intent who are trying to write these news, and they will try to write it by AI. So let's try to detect if something was written by AI. And one of those is Grover, which is a little bit confusing in its way of working, is that it tries to feed itself fake news that it creates, right? There's sort of like a cycle of like, let's create fake news and then let's feed that to myself and see like what are kind of the hallmarks of fake news. And it boasts a very high correctness rate. And later, if you have a computer with you, you can try it out for yourself to see what happens, right? And then there's another one, which is ChatGPT's, the OpenAI's kind of one of OpenAI's newest tools. It's called AI Text Classifier, and it's created in response to a lot of concerns of people of like you're using AI to do some bad things, just for example, like trying to cheat in classes or things like that. So they developed these tools as kind of like a response to that, to tell you, oh, is this like AI written or not? And the website itself says that it's very inaccurate. I don't think, yeah, it says right here, isn't always accurate. And on its website, it actually says that it has like a very low kind of true, very low accuracy in these. So it has like 26% true positive accuracy, means it identifies something as AI written correctly only around like a quarter of the time, right? So it's not a lot. And you would see for yourself later when we do the activity together. And yeah, you can easily modify the text to make it look like something is human written as well. Yeah, so I think this is good time to do a little bit of interactive activity ourselves. So if you guys can open the AI text classifier, I know like it's not like a link you can click on, but if you kind of look on Google, you can see those tools as well. So one is like the AI text classifier, and the second one is Grover. And Grover actually created, made available some of the fake news article that it creates, right? So I think the one that I showed you earlier is about like vaccines and autism. So what I let you guys do is to take one of those fake news articles, right, and try to trick the AI text classifier into thinking that it's real. So trying to get it to say that it's unlikely to be AI written, right? And if we have time, we'll do number 2, but I think let's just for now let's just focus on 1. So yeah, if you don't have a computer with you, maybe like you guys can group together and start to and try it today, right? And maybe like we can see who does it the fastest. Yeah, so when you go to the Grover website, it will have like in the detect section of it, there will be like a few examples, and you can feel free to choose anything from the Grover news. Those are the things that Grover has created themselves. So I think this one is like a Paul Krugman article about why Bitcoin is great. And things like that. So maybe pick your choose and try to see how easy it is for the OpenAI text classifier to think it's human text.
Is everyone able to access the website here? Okay.
So how are we doing? Has anyone been able to trick the OpenAI text classifier? Yeah, but just by a show of hands if you are able to do it. Awesome. Yeah, what?
And what did it say?
It was like very unlikely to be written by an AI.
Yeah, I think when I pasted one of the articles the other day, it passed on the first try, and it just goes to show how kind of unreliable the tool is right now, right? And if you guys like maybe try it out, I think the more challenging exercise is to try to get Grover to say that something is to get something wrong. I think Grover was really good. I tried to throw a lot of ChatGPT generated stuff at it. I think the slides will be sent to you later, but I created like a couple of articles about like how climate change is fake using ChatGPT, and then fed it to Grover. And even after like I edited it kind of very heavily, right? Trying to put in very short sentences, splicing in between longer sentences, like basically doing the things that would make like something like Grover identify as human written news. It still says that like it was like AI written. So it's a very, this one is actually a very powerful tool, I feel like. And if you guys know GPT-0, the one like a CS student at Princeton wrote over winter break, yeah, that one also is pretty powerful. So maybe if you guys are interested in doing this, maybe you can do it as kind of like a fun exercise later. So yeah, but I think we're gonna return back to where we are. Sorry. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so we can see that it's not too good, right? And actually, people have done scientific studies about this. So it's deceptively kind of simple their conclusions, right? So someone tried it on FakeBox. FakeBox is one of those things that would tell you if something was fake, but I don't have the time to do the demo here because like you would have to install a lot of things. But basically, they tried it like putting like sensitive, like shocking terms, or sometimes they try to write articles that are true but very kind of underwritten, like things that you would do like on your first draft. And you can see the accuracy down there is not too good. It's like 43% for the real news, right? So it's not too good, this one. And someone did another study on Grover. The 92% number is kind of boasted by the makers of Grover, right? But another study tried to attack it, basically trying to do what we just did, which is making articles that are fake, but we'll try to make it think it's real. The accuracy down here, and you can, if you are interested, you can read the whole study. It's around like somewhere like 50–70%. So that means it still leaves a lot of things through the cracks, right? And it's not good when you want to have something that tells you whether something is AI written or human written, or sometimes even fake or real, right? But then it only does that like with a accuracy a little bit better than flipping a coin. So maybe we want to think a little bit more about this, right? Do you think it is good, it is right, or it is moral, whatever you interpret this question to be? Do you think it is right for them for say OpenAI, right? Should they release this text classifier knowing that it is only accurate maybe 25% of the time, or even lower? Yes.
I would say no, because people might trust it too much, not knowing how accurate it is, and that maybe there should be a higher threshold before it gets released.
Yeah, I think that's actually what a lot of people have been saying, right? Why are you releasing something that is even worse than a coin flip, right? Well, maybe we should kind of go back to the drawing board. But does anyone want to talk about why OpenAI might have decided to release this anyway? Yes.
I mean, if you disclose that it's 25% accurate, then if you look at it and you can just look at it and be like, oh, so this is what he says. I'll take that with the 25% grain of salt that I should.
Yeah.
And then just work with that.
Yeah, that is a good rebuttal to the problem that people have been raising, right? Maybe as long as we preface it and have people be a little bit more cautious when they use these tools, maybe it's fine to release it. And even we might say that, oh, if they're releasing this for kind of study and research purposes, right? Because this is really at a phase where OpenAI is trying to gather data from users and trying to improve its model. So maybe there is still some utility in releasing the tool, but with some kind of hedging that you have discussed, right? So I think that it is a problem that extends to a lot of other things as well. When we're trying to develop solutions to the big problems of the world, right? Do we want to do it kind of one step at a time, learning as we go, or do we want to release something and have it kind of work straight away? So that is a question that I think would be helpful as you think about technology in the future, if you're working with it. But for now, this is going to be a discussion. All right. And finally, I'm just going to talk really quickly about what we should do with all the discussion that we have been having about technology, about AI, and about fake news, right? And this is sort of where I circle back to the thing where I was talking a few minutes ago about how inaccurate it is, right? If it's 26%, are we better off just using our own cognition, right? And this is a couple of studies that have been done by Pennycook and Rand, who suggest that it's not often that people lean on their political biases to believe in fake news, but more so, they don't look at it too carefully, and that is why they're sucked into it. I think these are very interesting articles that you might want to check out on your own time if you like. But yeah, the title itself is also a little gets you interested, right? Lazy, not biased. So they're suggesting that because people are lazy and not checking their news, their sources, so that is why they're taking it. So maybe we don't need a tool after all, right? But that is just but I think that is an aside that is really interesting to think about. Some people have tried to use like AI to put out news. Sometimes it doesn't work. If you look on CNET, sometimes they have used AI to do like some articles about personal finance, but it often is not good. Sometimes like they got very simple kind of financial definitions wrong, and that gets and they have to disclose that and be like, we're really sorry about that. And as we said before, there are people who might leverage the AI's ability to create kind of polished words that are not necessarily have to be like too kind of poetic or something, to put out credible looking fake news, right? But then it sort of talks about how should we present our findings, right? As we have learned in college a lot of times, the important thing is not the result, but maybe it's like how you get there, right? When you're asked to show your work in calculus classes or something. So one idea is that we might do something like what Meta, Facebook have done, which is kind of put out this little notification there that people can read and be like, yeah, this is something I can refer to when making my decision. So basically trying to bridge that gap between people having too little time to kind of fact check their own sources, right? So when doing this, it might be like a nice thing for people to refer to. But sometimes they might use something like AI, right, to enforce. And in this case, well, this is not enforced by AI, but let's imagine a future in which they can. So Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene used to post things about like COVID vaccines, like it was kind of like during COVID and those things, right? And then after a while, she was just banned from Twitter. I think she's back now. But yeah, there was a period where she was banned from Twitter because her news was deemed to not be real. So let's think about what would happen with AI being on the scene. When you have the tools that we have been discussing, what do you think is the best way that makers can sort of incorporate AI insight into their products, right? Should they use it as sort of like a referential resource, or should they use it to enforce things, or is there some sort of like in between that we can do to maximize the utility of AI in this area? Any ideas?
I think the way that OpenAI does it with transparency, just saying that like, oh, it works a quarter of the time, I think that's good. I think if they continue down that path and maybe like point the users to some of the resources they gather, like some scientific journals about how it's not very reliable or some things like that. But I think transparency should be like above all else.
Yeah, I think transparency is one good way to do it, and I think when you talk about like how to present your findings, right? A very good thing to do, a very good best practice is to tell them about how good your tool is, and that solves a lot of questions about the tool being not effective at all. Any other ideas? Okay, yeah, I think all the questions today are very big questions that maybe like even senior developers and people who are in big companies right now are still trying to answer. So maybe this is something that maybe like hopefully these questions that I've been asking today would kind of help you think about this issue a little bit more, right? How do we talk about fake and real? And if you started to do something about it, how can we go about it to ensure that your technology is kind of most helpful and how it could help people the most? So hopefully that has been the takeaways for today. And any final questions? All right, if not, thank you so much for spending time to listen to me. I hope it was helpful. And yeah, I'm gonna throw it back to Max and Isaac to talk about AI and art.